All right. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in today. My name is Morgan. I am the business and nonprofit librarian with Greensboro Public Library in Greensboro, North Carolina. And I'm also the public librarian representative and co-chair for the Entrepreneurship and Libraries Conference. We're going virtual this year, so we're trying some new things. And the conference is going to be from November 12th and 13th, and we are adding something really exciting. We are adding a library pitch competition. So for all of our business information professionals, we're probably familiar with pitch competitions, but as a librarian, you might not have to think about how would you pitch the value and the ideas that you bring to the business community in your neighborhood. So I'm very excited today to bring in Jenn Hensel from Launch Greensboro. Jenn has graciously agreed to help support the Entrepreneurship and Libraries Conference with her expertise working with entrepreneurs, specifically with entrepreneurs creating pitches. She brings a lot of wealth of knowledge, so we're just so excited to have her here. And I'm going to interview Jenn today, and we're going to talk a little bit about Launch Greensboro, entrepreneurial ecosystems, and how libraries can really fit into that ecosystem. So to start off with, Jenn, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, about Launch Greensboro, and what you do at Launch Greensboro?
Sure, and thanks for having me. So I am the Assistant Director of Launch Greensboro, which is the entrepreneurship arm of the Greensboro Area Chamber of Commerce. And we serve entrepreneurs, business owners in the Greensboro Triad, North Carolina area by providing education, mentoring, and access to capital. We tend to work with stages anywhere from ideation through growth and investment, although a kind of a sweet spot for us is definitely early stage entrepreneurs. I've been with the organization for 3 years now, and we love what we do. We love serving our community in this really unique way, and I'm happy to support the library conference too.
Awesome. Great. So a big part of what we talk about in the business librarian community is this idea of an entrepreneurial ecosystem, and I think there are a lot of different definitions around that. So to make sure we're all on the same page, Jenn, how do you define an entrepreneurial ecosystem?
Yeah, so I'm not sure if there's like a super concise definition, but I think that the concept and the verbiage ecosystem is such a perfect one for this. And it was a new concept to me when I came to our organization. I come from nonprofit management, and thinking about something as an ecosystem, right? It's about different pieces interacting and thriving holistically together. And that's kind of what I think about an entrepreneurial ecosystem, right? That it's about a community with different organizations serving different functions and roles, and really keeping the entrepreneur in mind. So one of the reasons that I think ecosystems are incredibly important is that if you think about serving an entrepreneur through their entire journey, they're going to need different resources at different times in their journey. And not every organization, not one organization can serve all entrepreneurs in every industry at every stage that they're at, right? It takes kind of a village to support, shape, mold an entrepreneur. And so when I think of an ecosystem, I really think of it as this kind of longevity set of organizations that an entrepreneur can tap into at different points for different needs. The way the entrepreneurship ecosystems are required to work together for a thriving system is they must work together. It can't be really like siloed organizations. There shouldn't be competition. Really the goal, I think, of any successful entrepreneurship ecosystem is really kind of pushing through on behalf of creating social capital and really having a goal of economic development. So that is always a consistent goal for our organization and our ecosystem, is to really see how can we support the Greensboro Triad area in job development, economic development. We happen to see that focus via entrepreneurship and small business and people building their own futures and hiring new employees and creating jobs. And so I think that those kind of two pieces, social capital and economic development, and then that key function of interaction and collaboration is really important.
Awesome. So you've already touched a little bit about how Launch Greensboro fits into our ecosystem here, but I know you guys have some really incredible programs that you seem to have. I know you've just created some new ones as well due to the pandemic. So you seem to have created some really responsive programs to your place in the ecosystem. So I'd love if you could tell us a little bit more about how Launch fits into our ecosystem here.
Yeah, so I'll kind of answer that first, the last question first, which is a little bit about how our organization fits into our ecosystem. And that is, when I mentioned we're kind of an early stage resource, there are other organizations in our area who tend to serve businesses at about the $1 million revenue level and beyond, right? And that's not exactly where we play. We play in the earlier stages when people first have an idea and have no idea how to flesh it out. We certainly play and support with the companies that have just launched and are in their first year of business and figuring out all the stumbling blocks. And we play really well with companies that have kind of been in the game for a bit. They have revenue, they have customers, they've learned kind of the hard knocks and are looking to scale, right? And so because we fit in that particular area, and again, there are multiple agencies that do similar work, but for a different stage or industry specific or something like that, or specifically in our area, a lot of university players. But because we play in that kind of ideation, launch, and growth stage, we see ourselves as having to be really flexible and really kind of agile. So the way that my boss and I think about our work is with the entrepreneurial mindset. So we believe that our entrepreneurs have to understand their customer and understand the world around them, the market, and respond accordingly, and we're no different. And so when we saw, a lot of displaced workers, unemployment is very high across the nation due to, COVID-related economies, and businesses shifting priorities, including their payroll line items, we decided that this was a great place and time for us to step in and try to serve our community, not in necessarily a new way, but almost in a new, with a new group of people. And we call them non-traditional entrepreneurs because they don't think of themselves oftentimes as entrepreneurs. And so the program you're referencing, we call it the Furlough to Entrepreneurship Camp, and it's a boot camp. And we take people who are furloughed or unemployed and help them think through different ideas, really consider feasibility of those ideas, and then start strategizing about how to build a business out of those. And again, we did that in direct response to the market that we're in. And so again, it's for us, and I know you guys, Greensboro Public Library, I think everyone is starting to just shift and respond and try to serve our community in the best way we can. And that was the best way that we thought that we could really serve right now.
Yeah, and I think that's such a great point, being part of kind of what I hear you saying is, being part of an entrepreneurial ecosystem doesn't always mean, or it in addition to serving entrepreneurs, it means thinking entrepreneurially. I love that. So let's talk a little bit about libraries. So this is the Entrepreneurship and Libraries Conference.
Yeah.
And we are taking a broad view of libraries. So, information professional might be a better term, a more inclusive term, but I'd love to hear what your experience has been working with libraries, whether public, academic, maybe even special libraries within the entrepreneurial ecosystem.
Yeah, so I have to admit that libraries weren't my first agency that came kind of top of mind when I thought about an entrepreneurial ecosystem. Again, the kind of agency that we're called an entrepreneur support organization. And libraries just weren't really in my realm of view at that point, kind of when I first started. And I can look back now and see kind of what a shame that was, because I do think that libraries can play a significant role in any ecosystem. And I think not only can they play a role, but they can be a really vital and foundational piece of an ecosystem. So the reason I say that is that I think libraries have a special access point to the community that a lot of entrepreneurial support organizations don't have. And that's because, as I referenced earlier, a lot of citizens don't see themselves as entrepreneurs. Even if they think they have a business idea or they want to start a small business, entrepreneurship isn't a word that they would define themselves as. Because of that, Citizens don't always know how to seek out resources like ours, okay? But they do know and are very familiar with accessing libraries. Libraries are a central hub in our society. They're where children go, they're where students go, they're where adults go for further learning and access to databases and that kind of thing. And so because communities serve patrons from across the spectrum of a community, I think that you guys have an easier probably ability to have that conversation with someone, to hear what it is they're looking for. Like, why did you come to the library today? Oh, you're looking for research on X. Oh, well, X is entrepreneurship. And the way that, you and I have talked about this interplay between our organizations and you and our ecosystem is that, every entrepreneur needs to do research on their competition, on their industry, on their market size. And so an easy handoff for me is to meet with an entrepreneur and hand them off to you to do a lot of that research, because that's your specialty. And again, that's in the university setting or specialty library setting. And then I don't have to own that expertise, which has huge value to me because I can't be the expert at everything. So I'm good at supporting programs and creating entrepreneurship learning. But if I can hand someone off to you to do really excellent research, and then you hand them back to me, having come with that knowledge created, then I can take them to the next step as well. And so I see libraries as a really fundamental role for the first case of being an access point, but then also being this, specializing in research and in pushing people out into different community agencies and organizations, right? Like libraries do that all the time. That's kind of how I believe at least you function, is very kind of hub and spoke. And so I think it's a shame that I didn't necessarily recognize the value that a library could hold in an ecosystem. And I'm not sure why that was. I think it'd be interesting to kind of think about why, if it's my own personal experience or what, but I think that having built a relationship with you specifically, and kind of the enthusiasm that you bring and your interest in our ecosystem and in playing a role has made such a difference for our entrepreneurs in the Greensboro community.
Awesome. Well, first of all, thank you. That's quite an honor coming from you. But I think, I think that leads to another question. A big part of the pitch competition that we're planning on doing is, how can we help librarians bring that value to ecosystem partners that just haven't thought about libraries? Because you're certainly not alone there. I think I can speak for all librarians who have a special focus in business information that whether it's in academic spaces, public libraries, specialty libraries, sometimes it's a battle to think about how do we connect. So when you think about what makes a good partner in an ecosystem, what are the traits, values, what makes you say like, yes, I want to partner with this person, or I trust them with the clients that I'm wanting to send to them?
What a good question. And almost a loaded question. I think it's like, how could, so I think kind of first and foremost, and this is really kind of based in our relationship, but also in relationships I have with other ecosystem partners, it's about building the trust and building the relationship from a collaboration standpoint and not a competition standpoint. I honestly probably think that may be an unfair advantage that librarians and libraries offer to an ecosystem, is that that you aren't competing with other support agencies to kind of own isn't the right word, but kind of have title to some entrepreneurs or some companies. Like libraries are so steeped in service, I think. And so I think there's a value there that I hope you all recognize, is that you aren't competition to us. I think it's really seen as a resource. But that personal relationship and trustworthiness is about, if I give someone to you, do you follow through on what my expectation is? Because if I'm referring an entrepreneur to someone, I expect them to do what their expertise is, right? So if I send an email, I expect you to be able to take that handoff, do the expertise that you offer and then hand them back to me, shoot me an email when it's done, like, hey, met with so-and-so, we had a great talk, I set them up with a database and they are good to go, can't wait to see how they thrive, keep me in the loop, right? Like that kind of communication is truly collaboration, because it says to me, and I would do the same to you, of we're in this together, we are really wrapping ourselves around this entrepreneur and kind of holding them up together. It recognizes that it takes all of us to make that happen. So I think that trustworthiness piece, that follow through piece, and then in terms of being a good partner, I think it is referring back to us, right? Because again, our goal is to serve as many entrepreneurs as we can and to make them thriving businesses. And so if you can be a referral to us, and you know, we have on all of our applications, how did you hear about Launch Greensboro? I would hope that they would put in Greensboro Public Library, right? Because I would hope that you're talking enough about us or any ecosystem partner that they say, hey, I heard about you from, and they said you would be great, they sent me your way, blah, 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 blah. Right. And so I think those are some really key pieces. I think that enthusiasm, as I kind of mentioned with you, I think enthusiasm goes a long way, because those of us who work in entrepreneurial support tend to be pretty high energy. And I think we right?
I haven't really thought about that, but that's really true.
We have to, yeah. I think, because our brains are going so fast, but also like there's a lot of creativity that comes with the jobs we do, and there's a lot of we're people. And so, you know, kind of as social creatures, I think being able to jump into an ecosystem and really get to know the players and build that personal relationship and be high energy and just really love entrepreneurship. If you don't love entrepreneurship, I think it shows, right? It's almost a badge that we can wear and we can see right through it. And we want you to be on the entrepreneurship team, and we want you to be on our team. And so I think that enthusiasm just for job creation and for ideation and for seeing people be successful and knowing that you played a small part in that is really exciting. And I think as librarians get more involved in an ecosystem and can have some of those shared successes and kind of build out relationships with entrepreneurs as well as entrepreneurial organizations, that history of working in an ecosystem builds traction as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, yeah, that was, I think, said really well. And, you know, as libraries, we always are focused on our communities, right? So whether in a public library space, it's, you know, a public library community, in an academic space, a student community, a college community, special libraries, their business, if they're affiliated with a business. And what I really hear you saying, you know, an ecosystem partner is as a partner and making a better community, and not competing in that sense of remembering the greater good that is at work here. So I think that's really powerfully said. Well, one last question for you. So I've heard, you know, I think we can definitely pick up on some things that librarians can focus on when they are meeting with ecosystem partners for the first time. I think they can definitely feel encouraged that the skills that we bring as librarians and information professionals can certainly be used. But just to end on, you know, how can we do a better job pitching our resources and our services to our ecosystem? What are just like some quick things that kind of come to your mind in reaching out for that first time and just starting a conversation?
Yeah, I think I hope that this video is encouraging for people. I hope that it does say to librarians, like, yes, you have value in this space, and to be confident to go out to those ecosystem partners. Because I think, just like with our relationship, entrepreneur support organizations are going to learn, just like I did, that you absolutely hold value. And what were we doing before we had you as a partner? What were we doing? And were we serving entrepreneurs to the best of our ability when we weren't providing, you know, I do not have expertise in databases, in research, in like that information system work. And so was I truly serving to the best of our ability as a community if I didn't have you as a partner, right? So I think during those first one or two conversations, and I actually would almost turn the question back to you, because I know that you literally, personally, professionally, like, did this work in our town. But what I will say is, I think it's about researching the players in your area and starting to kind of map out who they are and what they do, kind of what entrepreneurs are they serving. Is it a stage? Is it an industry? Is it a minority focus? Does it have a fund or not? Like, really start to understand the different players, and then just pick one and start a conversation. And honestly, an easy one, maybe a low-hanging fruit one, would be one like ours, in meeting with primarily early stage support organizations. The other thing, and I really am going to turn it over to you, but is to potentially be a convener if an entrepreneurial ecosystem consortium or collaboration group doesn't exist in your community. I think a librarian would be a great person to start building the collective. So anyways, that's a place, if your community doesn't have one, it has one, then join it. And if your community doesn't have one, then find the players and think about creating it. But how did you, Morgan? How did you infiltrate the system so well?
It feels like you were sitting on my shoulder, because the process you described, I think, is quite literally the process I took. So I think, like a lot of business librarians, I never saw myself working with entrepreneurs. I never saw myself working with business information. It was just a situation where I came out of library school with my master's, and I just really wanted to get to work helping people. And this was the position and the place that I wanted to be, and I was terrified. And so taking that first step is really scary when you feel like you don't have your business language is kind of an entrepreneurial language. It's definitely its own language, its own concept. So that can make you feel like you're on somewhat of an unequal footing. But for me, one thing I did was I looked to our institutional history to try and identify partners that we had worked with historically that might have a certain level of understanding about what the library did. So for us, that was our local community college small business center, who, after I went, I introduced myself, I'm the new business librarian, I want to get to know you, said, hey, we've got this consortium meeting, it meets once a month, you should really come. And then just being really listening, hearing, believing what was being said, and then just kind of making those relationships as we go, and being really open to the idea that what we do isn't totally understood, but that falls on me to just help others understand. And when clients start being referred to me, like thanking the organization that sends them and ensuring that I do my absolute best to get them connected back in and move forward. And it's, like you said, it's been such a rewarding career, because you really feel like you're making a difference in people's lives in some small way, because it's hard. It's hard to be an entrepreneur. It takes so much work. And to feel like you can let them know that there are organizations out here who care about you, who care about what you're trying to do, and want to provide you with the resources, and then to find a community of support organizations. Why wouldn't you want to be involved?
Yeah, totally. And I think, like, hearing a couple things you said were really impactful. It's I could see it being uncomfortable, and I have empathy towards this because, like I said, I came from nonprofit management. I didn't come with an entrepreneurial background necessarily. I had worked in a startup nonprofit, so the concept and the infrastructure is similar. We see nonprofits as businesses and entrepreneurs as well, but I didn't have the entrepreneurial language in my vocabulary at all. I had the nonprofit world language, and I still every now and then like refer back to that language. But so I can empathize with how hard it is to walk into a space and feel like I'm already a little bit uncomfortable. I'm already not sure that I add value. And now everybody's talking about things that I don't understand. And that's hard. And so just honoring that, like, that's hard, but learning some of the language, I think, has got to be helpful. And the other piece you said is just like doing it.
Yeah.
Even when it doesn't necessarily feel like you might be making an impact yet, because I think it's a long game. Like an entrepreneurial ecosystem is a long game for a community. And so no set of community collaboration happens overnight. This is no different. You may be the librarian that walks into a meeting and everyone is thrilled that you walked in the door and they welcome you to the table and it all like flies from there. But it might be kind of a repetitive sales process of being like, this is who we are, this is what we offer, this is why I think I have a seat at the table, and waiting until that is recognized. But yeah, collaboration does not happen overnight.
And I guess one thing to kind of end on is just, I will say, going back to what we said at the very beginning, you know, and to be a member in an ecosystem, an entrepreneurial ecosystem does require you to exhibit some entrepreneurial skills. And I think that speaks to taking up space, having your understanding the value you bring, and just being consistent with it and keep coming, keep going. It will work. And just like an entrepreneur though, it takes work to make it work. So, being entrepreneurially minded, I think, is a key there. And hopefully through this conference and through your wonderful guidance with our pitch competition, will inspire more information professionals to get locked into their ecosystem and start making some really positive changes in their community.
I would love that. I would love for more librarians to be part of more ecosystems, and for more ecosystems to get even more rich in their offerings, because entrepreneurship is the future. And so I think that plugging in as many agencies as we can that can support that entrepreneur throughout their journey will be incredible. So thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It's always fun to talk to you.
Yes, it's wonderful to talk to you and find time to get together in this virtual space. So for everyone watching and listening, you can find out more about the Entrepreneurship and Libraries Conference at EntreLib, ENTRELIB.org. You can find out more about the pitch competition, learn about Launch Greensboro, which is the wonderful organizations Jenn's from. And we look forward to seeing everyone online November 12th and 13th. So thanks again so much, Jenn, and we will talk to you soon.